I don't think it's unreasonable to say that the Pac-12 is without a doubt the most interesting college conference right now. And I don't think it's really all that close. There are so many different storylines and question marks about the Pac-12. And I don't know when or how we're going to get answers to some of those questions besides just flat out waiting until the Saturday after Thanksgiving, which isn't really how college football works. We're going to sit here and speculate, analyze, discuss, and have those questions. So I've got 5 questions today about the Pac-12 after a wild, wacky, and really, honestly, a fun weekend of Pac-12 football. This is the Daily Huddle. I'm Garrett Searight. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. Let's dive right into the questions. I think the first question has to be about Colorado. They blow a 29-point lead on Friday to a Stanford team that is scrappy. And nobody ever wants to be described as scrappy because that is, if you were talented, people would describe you as talented. If you were explosive, if you were exquisite, if you were unreal at a certain aspect of the game, people would say that about you. When you're scrappy, it's just that, like, hey, you know, they got a lot of heart. It's the same thing as saying, like, you know, when a girl tells you, oh, you should go on a date with my friend, you're going to love her. And when you respond with, is she hot? And the girl says, she's got a great personality. Got it. If she was hot, you'd say she's hot. If you were talented, you would tell me that you're talented. If you were explosive, you'd tell me that you were explosive. When you're gritty or scrappy, there is an absence of talent. Very rarely are there teams that are uber talented, uber athletic, and their coach or any other pundit would tell you, oh, they're scrappy. Well, no, they're explosive and they're athletic and they're great defensively. Now, when you're just scrappy or gritty, real students of the game, it's not the description anybody ever wants to get, but that's the description that you do get. Stanford is scrappy, as you saw on Friday night. I was in the central time zone watching the game, which still, I think it was 12:30. Like, I couldn't stay up. I didn't make it to overtime. I got to the last couple of seconds of regulation. So I kind of feel Deion Sanders' pain of saying, you know, I thank God we're not in this conference next year because I'm tired of these late kickoffs, blah, blah, blah. Fun fact, it's not going to get any easier, Deion. The fact that you're good, you're going to play more. You're going to play more frequently on Friday nights and in prime time. I mean, for Pete's sake, your nickname is prime time. You should think it's all right to play after dark. But nonetheless, I think the first question is, how does Colorado make sure that Friday's collapse isn't a season killer? Because the 3 losses for the Buffs have been bad. They got their tails whipped by Oregon. They got beat around and pushed around against USC before mounting a pretty good comeback and falling short in a bit of a heartbreaker. And then you had a 29-0 halftime lead and lose at home on a Friday. That's a tough way to tally your 3rd loss. And really, we talked about it here. I talked about it early in the preseason of when you look at Colorado's schedule, that might be a 4-win team. Well, they're already a 4-win team, and that's with, wins over Nebraska and TCU. The schedule doesn't really get easier, however. They're at UCLA. Then, so they got a bye week this week, which comes at a really good time for them. You blow a 29-point lead. Like, we got some things to talk about and to fix. They're at UCLA versus Oregon State, which is pretty good. Arizona just beat the dog crap out of Washington State, at Washington State, and at Utah. So the bye week comes at a really good time because you got some things to evaluate, assess, and fix. But the schedule doesn't get any easier for Colorado. So I don't know how they go about making sure that game doesn't just completely torpedo or derail their season, but it's certainly something that they have to watch for and say, oh, okay, we're going to have to make sure that we can't let that loss beat us twice. And I think having the bye week helps a little bit. but you can't dwell on the fact that you blew a 29-point lead. Like, you just got to get over it. But I think that's easier said than done. The second Pac-12 question is the question that probably should have been answered already, but hasn't, and that is, will USC make a defensive coordinator change during the season? Because when you have the reigning Heisman Trophy winner and an offensive guru like Lincoln Riley as your head coach, the expectations should be high, especially at a program like SC. And the loss on Saturday at Notre Dame, where you got pummeled, I don't think was all that surprising to a lot of people. There was a reason that USC was undefeated and still ranked 10th. I think people forecasted an idea that there's a real possibility that somebody that's more physical than them is going to push them around and push them into the dirt. And when you lose a game 48-20 with the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, not great. And it's not the first time that USC has had those issues this season. When you take a look at their schedule, they gave up 48. And it's really a complete almost aversion to defense. They gave up 48 to Notre Dame, 41 to Arizona, 41 to Colorado, 28 to Arizona, 28 to San Jose State. It's almost a mindset of like, to hell with it, we'll just outscore the other team. And that works like 85% of the time. And we've had this discussion on the show. When you do that 85% of the time, that's fine at some schools. But at USC, where you need to be 12-0 to make the college football playoff, winning 85% of your games via screw it, we'll just chuck the pigskin and we're going to be better at it than you are, isn't good enough. So you have to change something, whether it's philosophy, whether it's scheme, something has to give, because it is obviously 48, 41, and 41 in your last 3 games given up. If you have to score more than 41, 41, and 48, you're going to have a hard time winning. Now, they're 2-1 in those games because they scored 48 and 43. But when you run into somebody who is better than you defensively, noticeably, Notre Dame next week against Utah, then you still have Washington and Oregon to go. USC might be a 9-3 team. They might be an 8-4 team when it's all said and done, because they just have no interest in being good defensively. And I get it to a point, because your recruiting base, guys want to play offense. Guys want the ball in their hands, or they want to play defensive back. You don't have 6'6", 290-pound defensive ends that run 4.5s. They just don't necessarily really grow like that in Southern California, in California. So you're at somewhat of a disadvantage. And I don't know if it's scheme. I don't know what it is, but something has to change, whether it's philosophy, whether it is the resources put into that side of the football, because it ain't good. And you can only keep having results like that so many times before somebody has to say, like, bruh, what are we doing? And I don't think that time is very far away for the Trojans. The third question in the Pac-12 this week is, what is the ceiling at Oregon State? Because they really kind of put a whipping on what I think is a pretty good UCLA team. I think UCLA is not bad. I think they're a little heavy on the Carson Steele, but I think UCLA is slightly underrated despite having 2 losses. But for Oregon State, DJ Uiagalelei is playing to the caliber that I think a lot of people thought we would see at Clemson. Now they have a 3-point loss to Washington State. That's like, oh man, if you could have that one back. Honestly, if Oregon State had that game back and they somehow manage a victory, they're a top 10 team. Now, whether they're a top 10 team and they don't get the respect that, that USC didn't get, and for good reason, I think, is that people thought that USC's defense wasn't very good and was going to get them beat at some point. And here we are. But Oregon State, I wonder what the ceiling is, because they're 6-1 right now. They play Arizona at Arizona. They're off this week at Arizona, at Colorado, and then Stanford, 3 in a row. Conceivably, that should be 3 wins. And then they finish with Washington and at Oregon. The at Oregon is going to, both games really are going to be a little bit bigger than usual, where Oregon State is already a big deal. We're not supposed to call it the Civil War anymore, but like, people don't forget. It's going to be the last time for a while that it's going to be Oregon State. It's going to be the last time for a while it's going to be Oregon State at Washington, with the Beavs being in a 2-team conference next year and Oregon and Washington leaving for the Big Ten. It's going to carry some more gravitas. So what is the ceiling at Oregon State? Because they're 6-1 right now. On paper, they got 2 more losses at Oregon and Washington. And I don't know that it's an easy slam dunk to say that that is 100% certain that they are going to lose both of those games. Can Oregon State be a New Year's 6 team? Yes and no, because I don't think there's going to be 4 teams from the Pac-12 that make New Year's 6. I will tell you, I still think there's a path for Oregon to the college football playoff. You lose a 3-point game on the road where you had a chance to at least tie it to send it to overtime, but your coach got a little antsy in his pantsy a couple of different times throughout the game. There's still a path to the college football playoff for Oregon. I think, and we'll talk about Washington in a little bit, I think Washington, barring a complete collapse, is New Year's 6 bound. And if USC is 10-2, they're going to get a New Year's 6 bid over Oregon State, which kind of sucks because all of those schools are going to have access to that in the future, where I don't know that that's going to be as accessible for Oregon State and Washington outside of if they join either the Mountain West or the American, going undefeated and being the Group of 5 representative. So I kind of want to see Oregon State in a New Year's 6 bowl game, to be honest with you, for the way the last year has gone for those fans. And now they're sitting on an island by themselves. Well, not technically by themselves, with Washington State. I think it would be fun to see Oregon State in a New Year's 6. I think that might be a little high, but I wouldn't say that it's unreasonable for them to view a New Year's 6 as a certain possibility at this point. I think people thought that they were going to be pretty good, and I think they are pretty good. They've just got that tough loss to Washington State that Oregon State's not going to get the benefit of the doubt like other programs are. Speaking of Washington State, the wheels have fallen off at the Palouse. They lost to UCLA, an 8-point game. And again, I think UCLA is pretty good. But they lost to UCLA, and then this weekend just got demolished by Arizona, 44-6. Now, the Wildcats are better. I don't know that they're good. Can I realize that that's maybe a little harsh and slightly unfair? I don't know that they're good. They're 4-3. They are 2-2 in the Pac-12, but those 2 wins are against Stanford and now Washington State, and their loss to Washington and USC. And they played Washington and USC pretty close. I don't know how good they are. And for them to just beat the brakes off of Washington State the way they did, I think you have to question, like, okay, well, what in the world is going on in Pullman? Because you were a top 15 team before you lose a tight game to UCLA, who I think was slightly underrated at that point. You lose a tight game, but then you just get your ass kicked at home by a team that's not great. What is the issue? What is the problem? Because I don't know that that's an easy fix. I think there's an easy fix when you lose an 8-point game to UCLA, and that's like your run defense just isn't that great. And that's fine. You can probably get by with that for a big chunk of your Pac-12 schedule. Losing 44-6 to Arizona is a what the hell happened situation. What the hell happened? And how do you fix it? Because it's back-to-back losses. One you can excuse. The second one is we have issues. So I don't know what's wrong at Washington State, but it doesn't get any easier because they're at Oregon on Saturday, and they're not going to be happy about some things that happened this past weekend. And the final Pac-12 question of today is a very simple one. Is Washington the best team in the country? If you wanted to, I think you could make that case. I think, and I don't think it would be a unreasonable, illogical, easily poo-pooed case to make. I don't think they're the best team in the country, but I think they're one of the 4 or 5 best teams in the country. I think Michael Penix Jr. is playing the best quarterback in the country. I think they've got really good wide receivers. In the defensive backfield, they're pretty good. I think offensive line, they've got maybe some room, not maybe. They've got room for improvement that they could get better at. But they're very good. They're very explosive. And I know the instant reaction is like, okay, yes, they are putting up a lot of points against bad teams, but I don't think that's the case. I think Oregon is really good. I don't know that they are top 4 or 5 teams in the country good, but they are unquestionably, at least to me, they are top 10 good, top maybe 8 good. Washington's doing it against Michigan State, Oregon. They haven't played really a whole lot of slouches. Like Tulsa's not great this year. Cal's not great. And Washington's going to have more chances to prove it. They're at USC versus Utah and at Oregon State in a 3-game stretch in the final stages of the season. They're going to have more opportunities to tally more and more top 15 wins on their schedule. And I think we're going to find out. Do I think they're the best team in the country? No. I think they might be the most fun team in the country, the most exciting team in the country. But are they top to bottom, position group by position group, unquestionably the best team in America? No. But if you wanted to make the case that they should be ranked number 1, I would listen to you. I don't know that if I had a top 25 ballot, and I don't, that they would be at the top of my list, but I think I would have them in the top 5 for certain. No questions asked. And maybe even in the top 3. But are they the best team in America? No, I don't think so. They might be the second best team in America if Brock Bowers' injury, which we'll talk about tomorrow, if that stays the way it is or gets worse, they might be better than Georgia. But right now, I think if Michigan were to play Washington, I would take the Wolverines. I think Michigan's the best team in the country, but that's another topic for another day because this is all about the Pac-12 today. But is Washington the best team in America? I don't think so, but they're not far off either. Like I said, we'll talk about Brock Bowers tomorrow. What does that mean for Georgia? Does it affect their college football playoff chances at all? I'll tell you what I think tomorrow on the Daily Huddle. This has been today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Certainly appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the college football content we're pumping out here on Saturday Glory. If you're listening on a podcast, drop a 5-star review and let us know how we're doing. We'll read them here on the show. It goes a long way in helping us get in front of more college football fans. Again, that'll do it for today's episode. We'll catch you back here tomorrow on the Daily Huddle with Saturday Glory.